Jon Jones, Dana White, and the UFC are currently ruining the heavyweight division. Honestly, right now, the top of the heavyweight division should be one of the most exciting title pictures in the UFC. Instead, we have a complete logjam where the best are not fighting the best. I think right now there are four guys who have a legit argument to be the best heavyweight in the world. The first one has to be Francis Ngannou. He was the undisputed heavyweight champion when he left. He has not lost in MMA since, but not going to talk about him a ton in this video because obviously he is outside the UFC. And even though the PFL would co-promote, they can still make that Francis-Jon Jones fight happen. The UFC is obviously never going to go along with that. The next guy who I think has an argument to be the best heavyweight is Tom Aspinall. Then you have Jon Jones, and then a potential wild card thrown in there with Alex Pereira, who could come up, try to become a 3-division champion. But the problem is that the next title fight in the heavyweight weight class is likely not going to contain two of these four options. We're currently looking at a fraudulent legacy fight between Jon Jones and what will be a 42-year-old Stipe Miocic, who has not won a fight in 4 years. And this isn't meant to come across as hating on Stipe. Stipe Miocic is an absolute legend. I think he's underappreciated. He's been underappreciated by the UFC for quite some time now. He is the heavyweight GOAT. But this is not like the greatest of all time and Jon Jones taking on the heavyweight GOAT in Stipe Miocic. This is likely going to be a shell of Stipe. Like I said, hasn't won a fight in 4 years. His last fight, he was knocked out brutally by Francis Ngannou. You cannot tell me that that dude can just step in after working as a firefighter and, perform to the level of a guy like Francis Ngannou, Tom Aspinall, the fights that we actually want to see. And now I would get this fight between Jon Jones and Stipe if there were no other matchups. Like if there was no other top contender, fine, make the legacy fight, whatever. That's kind of like what happened the first time they booked it. But that's just not the case. Like there are multiple options here that are just so much better. We could be looking at a new gen versus old gen fight. Tom Aspinall taking on Jon Jones. Can, Jon Jones beat the next great heavyweight in Tom Aspinall? I think Tom Aspinall is this new era of heavyweight, elite striking, elite grappling. He doesn't move like a heavyweight. He's not just plotting around. He's super mobile, super quick, has submission offense. He really does have it all. And we could see, can Jon Jones handle that challenge up at heavyweight? Since Jon Jones' last fight, Aspinall won his comeback fight from a torn ACL, won the interim title with a round 1 knockout over Sergey Pavlovich, and then he will defend or have the opportunity to defend his interim title at UFC 304. Yet he's not going to be Jon Jones' next fight. Typically, you win the interim belt, you're automatically next for the champion. Now, in this specific situation, Jon Jones still injured. You don't want to strip Jon Jones because he's such a star, a big name, fine. But the fact that Tom Aspinall will defend his interim title and then not be lined up to take on Jon Jones in his next fight, to me, that is just criminal to Tom Aspinall. And then another potential option here that I think has kind of just opened up. We have a once-in-a-lifetime fighter here in Alex Pereira. What he's done in less than 3 years is unbelievable. If you think about Alex Pereira's entire UFC career, that has taken place within one Jon Jones fight. Since Alex has come into the UFC, Jon Jones has fought one single time. He's won belts in 2 weight classes. He came into the UFC at 3-1. He's gone 8-1 within the promotion. He has 4 title wins, 1 at middleweight, 3 up at light heavyweight. 6 of his 8 wins are against former champions. So he's come in, he's just fought absolute killers. He's a very large 205er, definitely someone who could fill into a heavyweight frame. He's talked about, potentially moving up to heavyweight in the past. And right now, his only real fight is probably Magomed Ankalaev, which just has zero juice. With special fighters, sometimes the next fight isn't just the guy who's earned the title shot within the weight class. When you have someone who is as legendary as Alex Pereira on his current run, you have to capitalize when the iron is hot. And I do not think a Magomed Ankalaev fight does that. You're giving him someone who has literally no name value, among the casual audience, and also someone who's a fairly tough matchup. So it's really the worst combination here for a potential Alex Pereira fight. And I actually believe that outside of a Conor McGregor fight, because McGregor fighting, literally anyone would be the highest selling pay-per-view, Jon Jones versus Alex Pereira is probably the biggest fight the UFC could make right now. And I think arguably the most frustrating thing about this situation is having to hear Dana White shove the Jon Jones pound-for-pound #1 arguments down our throat. It's like every single press conference we are getting, Dana White hyping up Jon Jones. Islam Makhachev has a huge win. No, Islam's not pound for pound #1. It's Jon Jones. Let's just crap on the guy who just had an amazing performance. Alex Pereira, just completely annihilates Yuri Prochazka. No, Jon Jones, pound for pound number one. The man's fought one time in the last 4 years. You cannot be the pound for pound number one if you are not fighting, because how do you actually know if you are pound for pound number one? And then the other thing that just kills me about Dana's arguments is he constantly says that Ciryl Gane was the best heavyweight in the world. He says Jon Jones came in, he just ran through the best heavyweight in the world. That best heavyweight in the world was coming off a 1-win streak over Tai Tuivasa, where he was dropped badly, and the fight prior to that was out-wrestled by Francis Ngannou with blown-out knees. This idea that Ciryl Gane was some sort of world beater is just completely untrue. Maybe people thought that before the Francis fight, but after he was out-wrestled by a striker and then knocked down by Tai Tuivasa, that was definitely not the perception surrounding Ciryl Gane here. So you have guys like Alex Pereira, Islam Makhachev, Leon Edwards, who have been racking up high-level wins, staying fairly active, but for some reason Dana White continues to go way out of his way to protect Jon Jones. And I think he thinks he's promoting him, and I think he thinks he's doing a good job, but I actually feel like it's having the opposite effect on the fan base, because he's so adamant about something that is just so clearly untrue that I think the fans are just like, what is this dude talking about? No one's buying it, and I think it's actually probably having a negative reaction on Jon Jones. If it was just kind of laying low, you're going to make the Stipe fight, whatever, but the fact that he's going so out of his way to, try to prop up Jon Jones, who has been so inactive, it's just not working, in my opinion, with the fans. In my opinion, if this Jon Jones-Stipe Miocic fight is such a legacy matchup, it shouldn't need a belt. You strip Jon Jones. If Aspinall wins at 304, you make him versus Pereira for the undisputed heavyweight title. They won't do it, but I think they should. I just don't get it, right? This is not the rightful heavyweight number one contender. No one thinks Stipe Miocic is the next best heavyweight, if you do view Jon Jones as the top option. It's not a legit title fight, but they're going to try to make it look that way. And see, it would be great if Jon Jones actually wanted to fight the best in the world, but it's really tough to blame him here. He's getting to fight a shell of a legend for a huge paycheck, and at this point, it's on the UFC to step in. It's not on Jon Jones to be no, please, give me the tougher matchup in Tom Aspinall, or give me the matchup against Alex Pereira, who could, literally flatline me at any second. Jon Jones, shouldn't be the one making that call. It'd be nice if he was I want to legitimize my heavyweight run, fight the best heavyweight in the world, but like I said, it's not on him to do it. I guess the main thing that's been frustrating about Jon Jones is how he goes on X, Twitter, and just tries to constantly dismiss Tom Aspinall while also not wanting to fight him. Even after Pereira's win at UFC 300, he was trying to, get the fans to, hype up that fight over Tom Aspinall. It didn't work. But then Alex Pereira gets a big win at UFC 303, and now he's oh, Alex Pereira would have to fight Tom Aspinall before he fights me. So it really does seem like he's deflecting, running from the tough matchups here, which, is not ideal for someone who's currently holding the belt. And I do think that if Jon Jones retires after beating Stipe, say he gets the Stipe fight, he wins, he rides off into the sunset, I think the heavyweight run is going to age absolutely terribly. He's pretty much managed to weasel his way into 2 title fights while avoiding the actual best heavyweights in the world. And when you look back on it, Anderson Silva was a guy where when he was a champion at middleweight, he would go up to take fights at 205. Now, he wasn't taking title fights at 205, but he was taking, ranked opponents, solid competition. So is there a massive difference from what Jon Jones will have done at heavyweight if he just has those 2 fights compared to Anderson Silva going up at 205 and fighting James Irvin, Forrest Griffin, Stephan Bonner? Is there a massive difference between that? I think the only difference is that Anderson Silva didn't have a title slapped on those matchups. That's really the only thing separating it, in my opinion. And as a fan, it's just tough to see the UFC have so many great options with so many elite fighters. I mean, fun fighters. Jon Jones, Tom Aspinall, Alex Pereira. These are legendary fights that could be made. And it's just tough to see them dig their heels in on literally the worst possible matchup they could make. The UFC always says they make the fights the fans want to see. I don't know if there is a single person outside of Jon Jones and Stipe Miocic, maybe their families, training partners, teams, but outside of, their groups, I don't think there's a single person who would pick that fight over either Jones versus Aspinall or Jones versus Pereira. I think the Jones-Aspinall fight, I think that's the real test of who is the best heavyweight in the world. That's the fight that I'd personally want to see. But in terms of hype, the opportunity for Alex Pereira to become a 3-division champion, I think that Jones-Pereira fight, might get more hype from the fans. But either of those, in my opinion, are better than the Jon Jones-Stipe Miocic matchup. So that'll wrap it up for my rant. Let me know your thoughts. Do you guys agree here? It's just tough. They have a lot of solid options, and I think they're going to stick with this Jon Jones-Stipe Miocic fight. Like I said, let me know your thoughts. Thank you for listening all the way through, and I will see you guys in the next one.